Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Some serious new questions now about the nation's national security. And who exactly has their eyes on our skies? New reports that mysterious drones are swarming a U.S. military base and did so for 17 days in December of last year. Wow. New reports of something that happened in December that breached our national security? The Pentagon says it's stumped with no idea who is behind it. The incident recalls the Chinese spy balloon. Remember, I said this is kind of reminiscent of that. Remember, it floated all across the country last year. It hovered over some secret, top secret sites for days before the military finally shot it down. Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin is at the Pentagon. Jennifer, I'm worried about the fact that they didn't know. I mean, I can accept they don't tell us, but they didn't know?
Well, they knew, but they didn't know who was behind it. This was an incredible, well-reported scoop, Harris, from our colleagues at the Wall Street Journal and confirmed to us by Pentagon officials early this morning. In December 2023, U.S. Air Force commanders at Langley Air Force Base in Southern Virginia, home to the F-22 Raptors, noticed over a period of 17 days, dozens of unidentified drones would begin flying over the base shortly after dusk each night. The Air Force, by federal law, was not allowed to shoot these mystery drones out of the sky. The White House reportedly called for national security meetings to discuss how to address drones possibly sent by a foreign adversary. There were concerns about using electronic warfare or jamming systems for fear of interfering with commercial air travel over the holidays. 3 months earlier, mysterious drones were also spotted flying over a sensitive nuclear facility in Nevada. It is not clear whether these incidents were related. Here are some of the police reports from Virginia near Langley Air Force Base. December 6th, 10 p.m. Multiple drones had been tracked over Langley Air Force Base, and one was seen descending in the area of Marshall Street or Gosnold's Hope Park. The drone is not a Langley Air Force Base drone. December 7th, 11:07 p.m. Langley is reporting one that's about 25 feet off the ground, possibly landed at Gosnold's Hope. Myself and the other agent will be at 201 Drummond's at the horse pasture in the field, getting a strong signal. Adding to the mystery, on January 5th, a Chinese international student, Fengyang Shi, studying at University of Minnesota, was found trying to fish a drone out of a tree in Newport News, Virginia. Images taken by the drone showed aerial photos of the Huntington Ingalls facility, which builds nuclear submarines for the military and Ford-class aircraft carriers. He was then arrested 13 days later in San Francisco with a one-way ticket back to China. He was given a 6-month sentence. The drone mystery remains unsolved, Harris, but it certainly has the attention of Pentagon brass. Harris?
Well, I would hope so. I mean, drones are used in wartime. We've had 2 attempted assassinations on a past president. I mean, things flying in the sky, and a drone can hover and go low, too, and blow up. We need to know who's doing it. Jennifer, thank you. Great report.
So, our $1 trillion defense budget can't defend us at home? Welcome to Training Tuesday, and the Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, listen to this from that October 12th Wall Street Journal report that Jennifer didn't talk about. And this series of incidents over a 17-day period at Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, the home of the F-22, our premier fighter wing. Premier fighter wing. It's what makes the U.S. Air Force different. Air Force General Mark Kelly wasn't sure what was going on, so he looked at the suspicious fleet of unidentified aircraft that had been flying over Langley Air Force Base on Virginia's shoreline. He's a decorated senior commander at the base. Got up on a squadron rooftop to see for himself with a handful of other officers, probably the ones, like I used to be, responsible for a clutch of the nation's most advanced jet fighters, as I said, the F-22 Raptor. Well, for several nights, military personnel had reported a mysterious breach of restricted airspace over the stretch of land that has one of the largest concentrations of national security facilities in the United States. Think about that. The show usually starts 45 minutes to an hour after sunset, another senior officer told General Kelly. The first drone arrived shortly. Kelly, who's a career fighter pilot, estimated it was 20 feet long and flying at more than 100 miles an hour at an altitude of roughly 3,000 to 4,000 feet. And other drones, as part of a swarm, followed one by one, sounding in the distance like a parade of lawnmowers. The drones headed south across Chesapeake Bay toward Norfolk, Virginia, and over an area that includes a home base for the Navy SEAL Team 6 and Naval Station Norfolk, the world's largest Navy port. The problem? No defense was mounted, even though the most senior officers on the ground knew firsthand about this series of incidents, the 17 days in December. White House meetings were held for weeks with political appointees, civil servants, and the military officers talking a whole lot, but not mounting an adequate defense of America's premier advanced fighter base, a SEAL team training base, the Atlantic Fleet's naval air station full of fighter and attack jets, and the list goes on and on. America's military problem is twofold: leadership and lack of political will. And those are nation-ending problems, folks. As a former commander responsible for 2 high-value bases during my service, I have many questions, and all of you should too. Americans are rightly questioning all of our institutions that are responsible for defending us from election security, the border, and now military bases, even on our own soil. Well, former senior DOD official and retired Army colonel and author John Mills is back with us today to discuss all this and a lot more. Colonel Mills, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show.
Hey, Rob, an honor to be on the show again. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Well, let's start with the technical piece of this. What got my attention was 20 feet long, 3,000 to 4,000 feet at 100 miles per hour. That got my attention because a fighter pilot with the same experience that I've got in military aviation at a military air base in their restricted airspace, the most restricted airspace you can get over any airfield, really, but especially at these military airfields, there is something that is the size of a Cessna 172. A Cessna 172 is 27 feet long. That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. So I read when this first came out in December of last year, there actually was some reports, but it was very brief, gave no details, and just kind of appeared and went away. And I thought, well, that's interesting. That's very interesting. And then in January, February, you got the Chinese grad student caught trying to fly a drone over Huntington Ingalls, Newport News Shipbuilding. So I think, and I'm pretty sure there was a connection. I don't think these two events occurred apart from one another, but the general's description, I think, was a little bit interesting because the Wall Street Journal article came out about a week and a half ago with voluminous details that had not been reported before. And that kind of told me the interagency process, the initial findings had been concluded, and they were specially briefing, and Wall Street Journal was chosen to receive the special brief because they had a bunch of details never reported before. But the General Kelly, an accomplished pilot, I'm not going to question him, but it's a little bit, the description's a little bit odd because it's a fixed wing, meaning an airplane style drone, about 20 feet long, 100 miles an hour, 3,000 feet. Just the physics of that's a big airframe. But it also described it shepherding around a group of giant quadcopters. These aren't your little DJI drones, which is now sued the U.S. government. These aren't these little DJI drones you get at Costco. These are much bigger. These are like agricultural, industrial type drones that can carry a lot of ordnance. Now, the two of them operating with each other, and the fixed wing, because you have different flight characteristics. So it's kind of interesting. A fixed wing is shepherding around quadcopters. That's interesting in itself. And I mean, it also belies, where are you going to take off a 20-foot drone from? You can pretty much, because of battery power, you can pretty much draw a circle about 100 miles away from Langley. You know, for the fixed wing, maybe about 200, 300 miles. But for the quadcopters, you're going to get at best 50 miles. So that also brings up did these meet? Did they launch the fixed wing drone from one location and the quadcopters from a much closer location? It brings up all these questions. The battery power on those big quadcopters, that only gives them maybe an hour and a half of flight. So you can do the math and kind of figure out how to draw that circle. But a lot of interesting characteristics. And then we had the Chinese student no more than a month later flying a smaller DJI style drone right over the shipyard.
Yeah, I mean these quadcopters that were with the fixed wing aircraft didn't appear, based on the few photographs that I could see that civilians had taken, snapped of them. They didn't appear to be DJI size small, personal drones. They were like the 2 to 4 feet across types, which is why they could last an hour on battery power. But you're right. One of the things that came to my mind is, we have been working, we in the military aviation community and the intelligence community, we've been working on data linking assets, both airborne and on the ground, and perfecting that type of tactic, strategy, and capability for many, many years. I mean, you were a senior DoD official in cyber policy, so you're very familiar with data linking and those kind of things. And the first thing that came to my mind was, wow, we data link our combat packages, our strike packages in the Air Force, even with our allies. We try to make sure they have an interoperable data link so that we can all fly together without speaking. You can basically look at your display and listen to your audio and figure out where the other aircraft are, and it'll even pick up the enemies and use that for intel collection, for defense of the formation, and for attack purposes. Is that what we're talking about here? When we speak about this fixed wing platform shepherding these quadcopters around?
Yeah, two different flight profiles. So you got to take that into account. They have different loiter times, different. The fixed wing can loiter for a lot longer, but they clearly were talking and communicating. It was essentially a flying local area network that likely was operating totally separate from the cell phone network. Now, they might have been using emissions from the cell phone network to navigate, but that's passive. They were just receiving those signals, and they'd already mapped out the electronic warfare battle space and already knew about these cell phone towers, but they weren't transmitting over these towers. Two totally different things. And that's what's scary and unique, is they probably were talking to each other in a small airborne local area network, but they weren't talking to the cell phone towers other than using those signals to navigate, because they know, I already know that cell phone tower umpty-ump, that cell phone tower umpty-ump, and that cell phone tower umpty-ump. And between those three, I can triangulate where I'm at. That's the AI brain of these drones, and they're flying in close proximity, so they know about each other. They can sense and avoid each other. They can sense and cooperate with each other. And I would say very likely there was a low Earth orbit satellite aspect, because just like the spy balloon, one of the untold stories, it was patently obvious. There's been a few stories, but how is that spy balloon getting the data back? Well, it was probably bouncing it off the low Earth orbit satellite constellation. Probably same here. And the Chinese know the game, they know the legal game, and they know there's not a whole lot we can do with the LEO constellation. This is, their version of Elon Musk's Starlink. So I'm pretty sure the Chinese LEO constellation played a part in this.
Yeah, it would have to. Well, we got to take a commercial break, John. When we come back, though, I've got a little propaganda clip from the Department of Homeland Security, which is, surprise, the lead agency for counter UAS or counter drone operations on the domestic soil of the United States. Keep in mind, this video you're going to see after the break is from 2021. We'll be right back with retired Colonel John Mills.
As commercial drone technology evolves, the unmanned aircraft system, or UAS, threat landscape advances exponentially.
There are more than 1.7 million registered unmanned aerial systems in the United States, and the market is ever expanding.
The threat is considered high because UAS platforms can be used for clandestine surveillance of high-value facilities or loaded with munitions and used in attacks.
Really what it comes down to is any nefarious actor can own his own Air Force.
The Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate, or DHS S&T, has been tasked as the lead agency for research, testing, and evaluation within DHS for counter-UAS, known as CUAS.
CUAS is state-of-the-art technology deployed in coupling with procedures, tactics that law enforcement uses to defend against malicious threat actors utilizing UAS platforms. It allows law enforcement officers the ability to track, identify, and classify hostile UAS threats, determine the proper mitigation strategy, whether that be electronic mitigation or actually physically going out there and interdicting the UAS operator.
DHS is addressing the UAS situation while balancing its obligations to sustain and not erode privacy by adhering to privacy and civil liberties protections. So while cutting-edge science and technology protect the homeland, smart legislation such as Section 124N of the Preventing Emerging Threats Act and DHS privacy safeguards protect privacy and other rights of lawful drone users. But that complexity doesn't end with just weekend drone enthusiasts.
DHS is fully aware that small UAS and drones are a key enabling technology that support many positive missions, like safety missions for search and rescue, disaster surveying, even medical missions. But along with those capabilities and advances comes the potential for nefarious activity.
So when S&T conducted the first of its CUAS technology test events, it coordinated closely with DHS components and others.
The goal of this multi-day event is to test and evaluate how well these systems work in the operational environment.
Meanwhile, S&T is always looking to connect with promising outside innovators.
To ensure DHS S&T stays abreast of all the latest technologies in counter-UAS, we've established a long-range broad agency announcement where we invite academia, traditional, and even non-traditional providers to give us their best ideas to address this counter-UAS problem set.
S&T is rising to meet the challenge of this growing threat with its CUAS program.
The technology is a game changer in national security. The challenge is keeping up with the evolving threat and making sure that the technology continues to identify that evolving threat.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Training Tuesday, and we're live on Worldview Tube, and our X Spaces simulcast. And my guest is former senior DoD official in the cyber policy world at the SecDef level, and U.S. Army Colonel John Mills. We're talking about UASs, drones, is what we all commonly refer to them as, and the swarm of 17 days in December around the most, really, I think, prolific area of the United States with the most high-value military installations, ranging from nuclear submarine construction to the first fighter wing of F-22 Raptors, the premier air-to-air defense wing in the United States Air Force, which is one of the things that makes the United States Air Force the world's premier Air Force, regardless of everything that's going on. Well, John, I had to play that propaganda piece because that's from 2021. So just to highlight for the audience, this is not an unknown problem. We know about this. My concern is that we've put the Department of Homeland Security as the lead agency on counter-UAS operations and capabilities, tactics, and strategies. And here we are 4 years later. And you know, it started a long time before 2021, the construction of this unit and these capabilities. And we have this incident happen that we're just now finding out about. Lots of more questions in my head after I saw that video and realized who was actually in charge. One of them is, I think we've identified a giant seam between the ability for Department of Defense critical installations to defend themselves, even from espionage acts, which are, in my opinion, hostile and can create havoc and could have created havoc had this gone much further in this particular case. But there are installations that are even more critical than Langley or the sub-construction shipyard or Norfolk or Oceana or the SEAL team base. There are a lot more critical installations where the use of deadly force is obviously authorized in a great way. I've commanded one of them. And I have to tell you, I think I would be contemplating removing those from my airspace had this incident happened over one particular installation that I was the commander of.
Yeah, Rob, thank you. This is the largest cluster of I'm going to call it national security installations in the entire world. All the way on the top left is a U.S. government facility, not Department of Defense. Then you have Cheatham Annex. Then you have Yorktown Naval Weapons Station. Then you have Langley, which is both a NASA and an Air Force facility. You have Fort Eustis. You have Huntington Ingalls Shipyard. You have Norfolk Naval Station. You have Norfolk Naval Shipyard. You have Norfolk Naval Air Station. You have, let's see, oh my gosh, the amphibious base at Little Creek. So that's where all the amphibious vessels are at. Then you also have the even-numbered SEAL teams on the East Coast over there. Then you have Fort Story, an Army, it's actually a joint facility. You have Oceana, where all of the Navy East Coast fighter attack squadrons, all of them are at one facility. Then you have Dam Neck, which is also a special operations facility. So the largest cluster of national security. Now, it gets better than this. It's not just DHS. The problem is, and there's in my Gateway Pundit article identified, it's actually Congressional Research Service goes over this in detail. There's actually 4 government agencies that have piece parts of authority in the domestic airspace. Everybody's got to look at, we can't use Gatling guns and missiles in the domestic airspace. I mean, you know, that's everything. Well, don't we just shoot it down? Well, this flying was going over most of it did not go actually over Langley. It came to and they were very smart. This shows they know our legal proceedings and our legal roles and missions, because it didn't actually go over Langley, but it came right up to the perimeter at Langley. They know roles and missions. DOD is one of 4 agencies that has authority to interdict drones, but they only have it at a very small number of special facilities, and that's not these ones. So DOD essentially has no control beyond its perimeter, and even and it's only at a small number of base activities. You also have Department of Energy, but they can really only do that over the Nevada test site where we used to do underground testing. And newsflash, it looks like we might be starting underground testing again because of the rapidly deteriorating nuclear situation with China and Russia. But they, again, Department of Energy only has limited authority. You do have DHS and DOJ with some shared responsibilities, but it's FBI that has the lead for national security events, such as the Super Bowl, such as the State of the Union. But the problem is none of these departments or agencies have holistic. So there are huge gaps and seams in the domestic airspace and you have to have the right capability, and we haven't figured what that out is yet for the domestic environment. Now, if this was overseas and it was around a Centaurian system, yeah, they would just knock it down in a heartbeat. Well, we're not going to be firing Gatling guns over civilian housing. I mean, I don't know about the viewers. I don't want it fired over my house. It's a very bad idea. So we have to figure out the right capabilities. And people say, well, can't you jam it? Are you kidding me? Do you know how complex it is to get the legal authority to key the mic to do domestic electronic interference? I mean, you have to have court orders. You have to have all kinds of stuff. And you wouldn't believe the legal liability as soon as the U.S. government tries to jam anything in the domestic environment. It is a huge legal nut roll. We got to figure this out. And you know what? Whoever was doing this, and I think it was a foreign power, I think they knew our gaps and seams, and they were playing it.
Yeah, and I think they were identifying more even, John. And you mentioned the facility in Nevada, the nuclear facility. That was part of the article. I think in the Wall Street Journal article, there was an incident out there, not one the size of the one over the area in Virginia. Well, we've got some hands in the audience, a lot of questions. People have a lot of questions about this incident and this capability. Let's go ahead and take a question. Go ahead, Patriot Rob, Mr. Host.
Hey, thanks, Colonel. Both Colonels, thank you. So we also have a bunch of questions in the purple pill too. So we're going to go with Sophie King, and when we come back, we'll go with Lucky Dog.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Colonels Squared. My question is about preparation. Every base, they go over the risks. They go over potential attacks and so forth, and they make playbooks. If this happens, we do this. If this happens, and you're saying that we can't jam these people. You can't jam the drones because you have to get such and such legal paperwork. Can we not get that prepared ahead of time? Because this is a national security issue. Can they not do the legwork ahead of time so that next time we can respond?
That's a good question.
Well, there you go, Sophie King, thinking rational and thinking logical. Of course, this is what we need. I hate to say it, we almost need crises like this to kick the interagency in the rear end to get them to do something, because this is I just happen to know a lot about this issue. I'm not letting on with everything I know. This is a hugely complex issue, and that's exactly what you identified. Exactly what we need to have is essentially pre-approvals. Hopefully, this was the event that stirred what's left of the trusted U.S. government into action.
Yeah, the one installation I was talking about, every installation is going to be different, and some you actually will have the airspace and the territory to use a kinetic technique, but you would have to have pre-cleared fields of fire, so it was very clear rules of engagement, John, on what systems could be used, where, what even altitude direction that these vehicles would be headed in order to engage that. But you can train that and develop it and plan it and train that so you keep the public safe and keep the installation safe. But it's a complex issue. It's going to require more than one capability to defend against at most installations. We've got to take another commercial break, unfortunately. When we come back, though, I want to dive into a lot more in this, but connect it to the Chinese spy guy that was caught trying to fish his drone out of a tree near the facility we build nuclear submarines and Ford-class aircraft carriers at. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show with Colonel John Mills.
A Chinese student admitted guilt to 2 misdemeanors under the Espionage Act for using a drone to photograph naval shipyards in Virginia. Shi Fengyuan, born in China in 1998, pleaded guilty to 2 of 6 Espionage Act misdemeanors in federal court in Virginia's Eastern District on July 8th, according to court documents. The Department of Justice charged Shi in June and dismissed the remaining 4 misdemeanors. The 2 misdemeanors fall under a statute of the Espionage Act that prohibits unauthorized photography of military installations using aircraft such as drones. Court documents state that Shi purchased a drone on January 3rd while a student at the University of Minnesota on an agricultural engineering graduate student visa. A day later, he flew from San Francisco to Norfolk International Airport in Virginia, where he rented a car. Shi then flew the drone just before midnight on January 5th, taking photos of dry-docked U.S. naval vessels at BAE Systems Shipbuilding and General Dynamics NASCO in Norfolk. On January 6th, he then drove to Newport News, Virginia, where he again flew the drone around and over the Newport News Shipbuilding Shipyard, or NNSB, known for building nuclear submarines and Gerald R. Ford-class aircraft carriers. He took several more pictures of U.S. naval vessels in dry dock and under construction at NNSB. Due to inclement weather, his drone then got stuck in a resident's tree. The resident, suspicious of Shi's activities, called the local police. The police advised him to contact the fire department to retrieve his drone, but Shi left without it. On January 8th, the resident handed Shi's drone to the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, or NCIS. Shi did not return to the University of Minnesota after the incident. On January 18th, he was apprehended by law enforcement in California before he could board a one-way flight to China. According to the Department of Justice, each misdemeanor could result in up to a year in prison, a $100,000 fine, and a year of supervised release upon conviction. In Congress, lawmakers have expressed concerns about Chinese efforts to infiltrate U.S. military bases. For example, in June 2020, 3 Chinese nationals were sentenced to prison for trespassing and photographing the Naval Air Station Key West in Florida.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Training Tuesday, and we're talking about UASs, or drones, and drone swarms. The swarm that for 17 days in December of 2023, a large drone swarm appearing to be shepherded by a fixed-wing, 20-foot-long, 100-mile-an-hour aircraft, another drone. pretty much ranged wherever they wanted to during that time period around the place in the world where there's the largest number of national security bases and facilities. And my guest today is retired U.S. Army Colonel John Mills, who's also an author and former senior DoD official in cyber policy, and he knows a lot about the issues that we're talking about here. John, that story about Xi links very nicely into my opinion that these are foreign actors that are conducting these operations. And one of the reasons, isn't it because of the frequencies that were being used by these drones?
Well, so that picture of Xi in a uniform, I have never seen that before. So I'm going to do a little research on that, because I never knew that he had been, he probably had military service, required military service, but I've never seen that picture of him in uniform before. Some of the photography in that story was from different locations other than where he was flying, and he did have a picture. There was a picture of them flying over, I believe it was the Ford, the USS Gerald Ford, but I think that was actually a Huntington Ingalls promotional video. He has been sentenced to 6 months. One of the legal challenges in more forcefully pursuing him was that, at least with what the video, they looked at the card on the drone, because those DJIs do have you can see the feed real time. You can also record it on board. It really was a little bit underwhelming, and was essentially the same as a lot of like the PR shots that have been released. So they were saying, well, okay, we can't see. Now, again, that's what they released. Maybe there was stuff that they had. My concern is what happens if he flies it into, because there is an enclosed building facility there where they build the subs at, and that's totally enclosed. Well, did he fly it in there? That's concerning. Those DJIs have an extremely advanced seek and avoid, seek and follow capabilities. So, boy, he gets it into the big hangar where they build the subs at. Yikes, that is a very bad situation. But he is going to prison for 6 months, because I was concerned he was going to get totally off, but he is going for 6 months. China's going to look at him as, essentially, when he goes back to China, he's toast. They're going to consider him flipped and converted. So that guy's toast when he goes back. He has no future in China. But it's scary. Again, we have to figure out, and fast, a proper way. And like the caller very wisely brought up, we need to have these pre-approved packages and to be able to take them down in a proper way, fast. That's, at the shipyard, we got to do that. All these other facilities, the Naval Weapons Station close by, very likely has nukes there. Geez, we got to figure this out quick and get these pre-approved authorities out, because it's. The caller identified there's nothing more dangerous than two 06s together, and the last 06s, oftentimes one of their twilight duties is being a base post camp or station commander, and the last thing they want to do is have their face appear on the cover of Army Times, Air Force Times, Navy Times as the commander who got fired because they let a drone fly over their facility, even though they had no legal authority to do anything about it.
That's right. I mean, well, sometimes you have to make a decision. And I expect those commanders, I don't give a dang if they're at their twilight tour or they're in their stepping stone tour to general or admiral. They should make the right decision regardless of any of the lawyerly type stuff that's going on, because the last thing you want to do is have somebody get killed, maimed, hurt, or a high value asset get destroyed in an opening salvo of some kind of operation when you could have taken action, man. Well, we got some more questions over in the audience. No surprise there. Let's go ahead and take one real quick. But I want to get to after that. I want to get to some more of his actions and why they didn't go for a longer sentence, because his actions, I think, bear witness to what he was really up to. Go ahead, Patriot Rob.
Hey, Colonel, do you have time for two? One is going to be really quick, and then Lucky Dog's had his hand up for a while.
Sure, that all depends on the answer length, but go ahead.
All right. Well, this comes from Carla Kay. She wants to know if any of this drone activity happened under Trump's watch.
I don't think any drone activity, but during Trump's tenure, we did on foot have a number. That report did cite the Key West incident. That was during Trump's tenure. So they were attempting to breach DoD facilities by playing dumb and trying to get in through the front gate, or at Key West, walking around on the beach and getting around the fence line. So yes, they did try, but they were on foot during the Trump years.
Yeah, and do you remember the Pensacola undergraduate navigator training class? Was that during the Trump administration or just prior to that, when the Islamists got in as a Saudi Arabian student?
Oh, that one, boy, that was a while ago. I can't remember which administration that was going on during.
It might have been close between the two, you know. But these incidents are not unusual, and we've had drone incursions over our military airfields and installations in the Middle East and even in Europe and stuff frequently. So I can't really answer the question, but go ahead, Lucky Dog, with your question. We've still got time.
All right. Thank you, sir. The question I have is, if you can't shoot it down, can you at least send somebody to follow it? Because as you guys pointed out earlier, these things have a limited range. Maybe a helicopter to see where it lands, or is that maybe that's logistically harder than I think? But I'll go ahead and let you answer.
Well, so here's in the domestic airspace, and I don't know what exact platforms were at Langley, but it's not like the old days where we had a lot of extra light observation aircraft that the base commander or the wing commander or the general could jump into and get an airborne look. A lot of those, we don't have those anymore. They're retired. They're gone. You have the F-22s and nothing. That's all you got. Now, the FBI has a very large aircraft fleet domestically. It's not well understood, but you can just go to the FBI website and look that up. They have a very large airframe fleet. What they for these 17 days, I don't know why by day 3 the interagency didn't say, "Hey, FBI, pull all your aircraft away from monitoring school board meetings and election board meetings and use some of your assets." And there are some in Virginia, and get down there and see this. Now, it's also a safety of flight issue, because these drones are supposed to be flying under what's known as Federal Aviation Regulation Part 107. I can guarantee you these drones were not flying under that. So you put somebody up in an airframe trying to follow these things. You don't know where these things are going to go. It's in the dark. I don't know what the weather conditions were. This is a very high-risk situation where you're very likely to plow into, or they plow into you when you're trying to get a look at what they're doing.
Yeah, I was just thinking that why these generals didn't call for some pararescue helicopters, which have great sensor capability as part of the Air Force Special Operations team, to get deployed into Langley Air Force Base and the other fields around this area, because that's the type of aircraft you would have in today's Air Force, is a helicopter that could slow down, hover, even with very, very high-tech sensors, so they could spot these things, because the terminal control radars are tuned so they don't recognize a bird-sized target, which is what this would be, except for the 20-foot long one. I mean, that had to be showing on radar. I'd be very surprised if the radar controllers weren't seeing that, at least at the terminal control radar, right there in the approach radar and the tower radars. But yeah, that's one of the things that I was wondering, is why the commanders chose not to do anything more than what they did, because regardless of whether they're they're flying the border of the installation or not, they know they're able to look in, and the safety risk of it crashing into the installation, even though it might be flying the border, if something were to happen, is pretty great there, and it's some pretty high value assets, John.
There also was a report that they were actually flashing green and red anti-collision lights, which some said, well, hey, how could it be a foreign power if they were flying their anti-collision with their anti-collision lights on? Yeah, that's interesting. That is interesting if you're trying to be stealthy, but at the same time, I don't think that positively rejects the theory that they're a foreign power. But it is interesting, and there was some local videos that seemed to imply they were flying with anti-collision lights on. But I still trend toward this being a foreign power.
Well, visually, wouldn't you want to try to blend in visually if it's a night mission? There are drones everywhere. I sit on my front porch and watch drones fly up and down the beach here on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi at night, just above the water. It's pretty interesting watching that. And you go, wow, I wonder if there really is somebody behind that, or if it's just on AI, or it's set up on a pattern. But they all fly with their anti-collision lights running. Well, we got to take our last break, John. When we come back, I want to dive into should Americans feel like they're being defended and secured properly? I mean, I mentioned the elections and all kinds of other things that we should be being defended by our institutions against, and our confidence is really low in that. We're coming up on a historically important election here on November 5th. So we'll be right back with retired U.S. Army Colonel and senior DoD official John Mills, author, also an author, and we'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHouseBG.com.
Are you expecting chaos on Election Day?
No, I don't think so. Not from the side that votes for Trump.
What are you expecting? Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful Election Day.
Well, he doesn't have any idea what's happening in all fairness. He spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of Election Day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Training Tuesday, and my guest today is retired U.S. Army Colonel and former senior DoD official and author. His latest book is The War Against the Deep State, John Mills. We've been talking about this drone swarm 17-day period in December of 2023 that apparently did surveillance on over all the major military and national security installations in the area of the country and the world, really, according to Colonel Mills, of the most national security installations in the entire world in this area of Southern Virginia. And John, you know, the former president there was talking about a well reported on comment there, the enemy within, although the mainstream media and the regime media has taken the remarks and tried to make something out of them that they are not. He's talking like someone who's been the commander in chief and knows what tools are available to address domestic unrest and those kinds of things. And nothing he said there really stuck out to me from that regard. But what sticks out to me is, so we have these drone swarms now, and you have these people that he was talking about, the crazy lefties that have access to all this type of capability. So do people on the right. You could wreak havoc over voting locations after the sun goes down using this type of tactic, couldn't you?
Well,
Now
yeah,
that this
that's
story's
why
out.
the cybersecurity of your base enclave is important. You got to know all your endpoints, and you have to have all your cyber endpoints. You got to have them all passworded at least, because guess what? This drone swarm could actually, I mean, this is a flying electronic signals collection capability that can send and receive. They fly over a facility and find an unsecure IT endpoint. Guess what? They could both monitor it and they could transmit into it. And again, if they're operating in connection with low Earth orbit satellites, that means Chinese intelligence back in China could be using the Leo constellation to give direct orders to this. So, I mean, and I just got off a briefing by the Director of National Intelligence on election security about 3 hours ago. And it was lame. It was just captured by the old Russia narrative. Won't even consider China a player in election interference, are missing the obvious, not calling assassination attempts by Iran election interference. I mean, and I asked the question, well, what about illegals voting? Isn't that foreign interference, which is the legal title of this task force? It's just crazy. So, and oh, by the way, what President Trump said actually is in the oath of office for both civilians and military. Defend and uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So, sorry that they were offended by him citing the actual oath of office there, but they're triggered by just about anything.
So I'm not going to say, well, I will say it. Look, I have a report from a highly experienced software engineer developer, a person that up until the day he died, developed software for things like vehicles that are going to Mars. So flight software, rover software, understands cyber vulnerabilities. And he did a review for the state of Texas over their digital voting machines. And I have a copy of the report. He gave it to me. I mean, and it doesn't say this did happen, but it identified every single vulnerability. And it's one of the reasons why Texas didn't go to the machines that this man was hired to assess for vulnerabilities. They went to another one. But it's impossible to develop a digital, computerized machine that does things like collect data, count it, report on it, and those kind of things without some way to seek out and identify its vulnerabilities. And I'm just sitting here listening to what you just said, John. So these drones swarms could pick up an open IT entry point at a secure location. And I don't know how secure all the voting locations are that use digital voting machines. And if there's an entry point in that's not secure, the Chinese government, through their low Earth orbit satellites, could actually inject commands into that port. Is that what I heard?
It's a beautiful operating concept. You don't even need to travel on the undersea cables into the terrestrial American network and through the cell phone infrastructure. You just bypass all that and use the Leo constellation. It's a brilliant operating concept. And you're not even going to get detected by American intelligence attempting to, interdict and block that. It's brilliant. They just bypass, and that's where the spy balloon mean, it was obvious and intuitive. The balloon was shooting up till the Leo constellation, and all these smart people. It's not, oh, well, we can't talk about that. It's intuitively obvious from network architecture what was going on. And that's what the balloon was, just bypassing the terrestrial network. Brilliant operating concept.
Yeah, and I would imagine, to go back to the original drone swarm we talked about over Langley Air Force Base and those installations with the 20-foot long fixed wing aircraft moving fast, I would imagine it's got a data link up to the low Earth orbit satellite, and it's relaying any information that's being fed by the quadcopters drones. I'm imagining that it was getting fed all the information, the sensor information, and then relaying it up to the satellite constellation and receiving its orders that way when it needed to. But you brought up something I want to touch on again, and that is using the cell phone towers not to electronically use them for direction, but to use them for triangulation, which is the old style of Christopher Columbus navigation, using 3 known points to triangulate your position. And with today's artificial intelligence, you could do that very easily and rapidly and never even have to use a GPS signal.
Yeah, they've already mapped out the electronic order of battle throughout the United States. That's each one. Every time you fly a DJI, it's collecting almost 200 data elements and transmitting it back to Shenzhen, China. And it's collecting, it's sensing and reporting on cell phone towers, which has a distinct electronic digital fingerprint. So they've already mapped the environment, and they're using that for navigation because they know every cell phone tower. And again, every cell phone tower has a unique digital identification. So they know all these, and they're using it solely for navigation because they're saying, I see that one, that one, that one, and that one. Triangulate. I know exactly where I'm at passively. I don't even have to admit anything. So I know exactly where I'm at. And that's all AI enabled. But also talking about the enemy within, that fixed wing drone needed a little bit of an airfield, and probably within about 100 to 150 miles, I'd say more like 100 miles of the area. I know the area well. There's lots of undeveloped land, but they're not going to get an operation like this and conduct an operation, flight operations, without enabling help from likely legal U.S. citizens. So there is an enemy within. They didn't conduct this flight operation out. I mean, somebody's going to leak. Somebody's going to let the cat out of the bag. And so somebody was helping them. You have, I surmise there was at least two different launch points, one for the fixed wing drone, one for the quadcopters. And and the perfect hide for an operation like this is use of shipping containers. You can do so many incredible things with the myriad of different shipping containers out there, and you can totally fit out a shipping container to be the transport, be the launch point, be the maintenance point. And nobody knows. You just make it look all rusty and dingy on the outside, and nobody knows what's going on. But again, you need a launch point, and that means real estate. That means likely somebody's helping to enable that this is providing support and succor to this operation. So yeah, as the president said, there are insiders very likely helping this operation for the launch points.
Yeah. I mean, just like the citizen that called the police on Xi there when he was trying to fish his drone out of the tree, he was acting suspiciously. Call it in, folks. He was caught. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about is he only got 6 months. They were and they were only misdemeanors under the Espionage Act. But he obviously didn't go back to the school he was supposedly a student at and got a one-way ticket out of San Francisco, I think it was, back to China and tried to get on that airplane. I mean, those are pretty suspicious activities, and they sound like a trained, at least a defense intelligence operator, probably some type of civilian intelligence spy.
Well, if he would have gotten back to China without getting caught, he would have been a hero. Now that he's been caught, they're going to treat him as he's been flipped. He's toast. So the guy's as soon as he's released back to China, they're gonna do away with him. And I think they went after the misdemeanors because it was a pretty high bar on the felony counts. And there's actually legal precedent on this exact situation of flying drones near shipyards. And it actually didn't turn out well for the government because, essentially, just the simple story is it's a very high bar to convict somebody. And in some ways, that's a good thing. That's a good thing for private citizens. So they said, well, we're going to hit him on the misdemeanor, put him in jail for 6 months, try to work him, try to flip him. And he's going to be toast when he goes back to China anyway. So whatever.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate all your time. This is a very interested topic by my audience and myself, quite honestly. I mean, it's a matter of national defense right here at home. And we pay $1 trillion a year to defend ourselves, and it doesn't appear like we're being very effective. And it's true. Well, retired Colonel John Mills, author of The War Against the Deep State. You can find him on Twitter at Colonel Rhett John 2, at Colonel Rhett John 2. Follow him. He's a very bright guy, and he is all over things like this and a whole bunch of other stuff that you need to find out about. I'm Rob Maness, and I'll see you tomorrow. We'll have Jake Novak for Whistleblower Wednesday. We may be talking about some gold buried somewhere that citizens need to go find. And I'll see you then on Worldview 2.